was just to go home and like hang out with the woman who would very generously marry me. So, so this is basically a song about like my baloney, you know, alibi. It's called Alibi. October night, take the right turn off 9 to 3. Hit the brake, calculate the minutes till I see you. The questioner in my mind says, where were you tonight? And every night when the world was new, here's my alibi. I was with you all the while. Here's my alibi. I was with you all the while. Whenever I need to find myself, you appear. Fair and sweet recompense, solace in a word to tell the questioner in my mind that where I was tonight was still as light and quiet as proof. Here's my alibi. I was with you all the while. Here's my alibi. I was with you all the while. Do right by me. I was with you all the while. One more time, bring it home. I was with you all the while. All the while. Thank you. We actually had a couple more songs. We had 3 more. And we're going to change the tuning of the guitar quite radically here. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about Gwendolyn Brooks. So, I love Gwendolyn Brooks' writing. I think a lot of people maybe are most familiar with the one we're going to do, which is We Real Cool. And again, this was an idea that I'd had to share with my students, but the poem We Real Cool is about pool players. There's an epigraph or a little note. The little note says, the pool players, 7 at the Golden Shovel. And the Golden Shovel is like the place where they're playing pool. And again, like I'm a white teacher. I teach, you know, all sorts of different kids, but I was like, this is a poem about how these young men are having a lot of fun, but they're also in danger because their lifestyle is potentially a little dangerous, and the world that they're inhabiting is really dangerous. And so this was a poem where, when it came time to record it, I pretty much was like, Linda should sing the whole thing. And I hope that when we talk about staying in our lane, I hope that while I know what that means and I respect that, I also want to be able to like work with Black artists, because I think that that's like our duties to make good art together and to do work that celebrates each other's experiences. And so the goal with this one was not to like put my stamp on it. The goal on this one was to try to share with other people like how good I think this poem is. And what's neat about it, or I should say what's sad about it, is it's so short.
Sweet.
Yeah, and so we tried to like, we were thinking about like, how can we make it like a hair longer or whatever, or how could we impose a chorus upon it, and then we realized, this is Gwendolyn Brooks, don't mess with it, like don't mess with it, like, you know, let's be respectful and think about the fact that she was, you know, as amazing as she was. So So one more string to go, maybe two. I've tuned this guitar to a crazy old tuning so that it will play like a big old chord. And intelligently, the last three songs are in the same tune. So hopefully this becomes one-stop shopping. One more to go. I wish it was longer so I could hear you singing. So I could hear you singing.
Yeah, I love that song. I love that song.
I think that you put a stamp on that.
Just put that bad boy on.
I wish it was, yeah, it's just, it's what it is. And the thing about the poem also, because it's about like the young men, like it's, I don't want to compare the song to a life, because I'm not, but I'm saying like, the tragedy of the poem is that the lives are cut short.
Yeah.
And you know, at a degree of like 1 to 1,000, the tiniest little sad thing about that song, the way you sing it, is it's like you want to bring it back.
There's a lot of truth to it.
Yeah, but that's really if you the kids when they read it, they don't get it the first time. They're like, they think it's about the kids being cool, and it is. But so much of when you're young, being cool is thinking that you're invincible.
Yeah.
So I had the pleasure of 2 songs left. We're going to do a poem by a contemporary poet named Cornelius Eady, and he founded a thing called Cave Canem, and it's probably one of the most important, if not the most important, things dedicated to the art of Black poetry. Basically, it's a place for Black poets to shine. It's like an incubator. It's a community that that serves to advance Black art and Black poetry. When I was 15, so I'm going to be 50 this year, so it was like 34 years ago, I won a poetry competition. The prize was I got to go to, I'm from upstate New York, to Catskill Writers Workshop, and I met a young man named Cornelius Eady, who at the time was basically in his like 30s, or maybe like late 30s. He was a beautiful guy, like long flowing dreadlocks, just kind of an amazing figure, and was so gentle and sweet with all these pretentious wannabe, like little teenager kids. And he gave me his book, Victims of the Latest Dance Craze. And later, I connected with him on Facebook, because sometimes when we get older, it's okay to all be nice to each other, especially if we don't want anything from each other, we just want to like meet people. So he, was generous enough to be friends with me on Facebook, and I ran the idea by him, because he actually is a folk singer too. He takes all sorts of songs, and he writes like, songs about Sandra Bland, like he writes songs about all sorts of stuff that's contemporary. And I said to him, you can say no, of course, I don't want to offend, but would it be okay if we recorded one of your songs, one of your poems? And then he said we could, and so we did. And so this is called The Dance, and the book, Victims of the Latest Dance Craze, almost every poem in it has got to do with dancing. Right? And Linda and I are going to alternate it. I will be a thought cloud a sunbeam through a window in the dance, in the dance. And I will shake like the semis on the interstate. And I will shake like the tree kissed by lightning. And I will move, the earth will move too. And I will move,
The cities will move.
and I will move with the remains of my last paycheck in my pocket, in the dance,
In the dance. It'll be Friday night, and I'll be in my red dress, my faith relieved of duty. My body in free fall, loose as a ballerina in zero gravity.
equal at last with feathers and dust as the world faints and tumbles down the stairs. The jukebox is overtaken at last, and the cicadas underneath the eaves warm up their legs
For the dance.
for the dance.
For the dance. For the
As we wrap up, we want to say thank you very much to Terry for having us, and this is our second show together.
Yes.
So we're, I'm having a good time, so I hope we get to do it again.
Good.
I would like to retire this. We're going to be retiring this song tonight. This is the last song is by Emily Dickinson, but it's my way of default because I asked Lucille Clifton's family to be able to record it, and they said I couldn't. And respect, of course. So Lynn and they were talking about Lucille Clifton, and I was showing her some of my favorite Lucille Clifton poems, and I'm going to throw you under the bus right now. But then as soon as she read it, she was like, "This is
Amazing.
one of the best poets."
Your favorite.
Yeah, and so I absolutely adore Lucille Clifton. But as long as we don't record it, we can play "Blessing the Boats" next time.
Yes.
As long as we don't record it. But I don't know. Maybe we'll stick with Emily Dickinson. I don't know. But this is a poem by Emily Dickinson, who, as everybody knows, was basically unrecognized in her lifetime. And she wrote more than 1,000 poems. She's writing poems and writing. And she's living in Amherst. And so if you go to Amherst, there's the Emily Dickinson Museum. It always struck me that it was like, she was presented as like a spinster or this or that. But I never kind of believed it because in a lot of the pieces you sense that there's passion. There's like somebody who wanted to, I don't know. So Mike came back, and let's wrap up with Wild Nights by Emily Dickinson.
Thank you again for having us. It's so wonderful to be here.
Wild nights, were I with thee. Wild nights should be our luxury. Were I with thee, were I with thee.
tonight in thee. Where are thee? Why not luxury? Oh, luxury.
Nonetheless, let me begin our conversation tonight with a brief poetic reflection and get this thing moving. I came for the stories. I came for the stories of how you built this place. From the entrails, from the dregs, from the unwashed and the unwanted. The only place in the city they'd let you have. But you built it with pine and pegs and poles and persistence, with the beauty of duty and the substance of faith. I came for the stories of the heroes and the unheralded, of the legacy makers and the territory takers and the boundary shakers and the barrier breakers, the first ones to do the big thing, the bold thing, the forbidden, the unfamiliar, the courageous thing. I came for the stories, the ones you saved for your children and their children and their children. Anansi stories, Chaka Zulu stories, Sheba stories, Hannibal stories, Toussaint stories, Sojourner stories, Malcolm, Marcus, Martin, and Medgar stories. Epic, heroic, and tragic truth of how we came over and what we've overcome. I came for the stories, all of them, lost, stolen, or strayed, because history can't be real for me, can't reveal to me, can't appeal to me without showing the black and the brown and the tan. Whitewashing so clearly all critical race theory just tells me we are nearly erasing a past we will pay for dearly. I came for the stories only poets can tell, magical tales that cast a spell, living water from the griot's well, distant drumming and a faraway bell, the sea's reply from a queen, like a conversation between Miles and Q in a smoke-filled corner, just those two talking about the music round midnight. Miles and that miraculous horn, all gravel voice and full of scorn, asking Q, "What made you feel like doing stuff like that?" Jazz finds justice in the majesty of the blues. Take 5 to wonder and you'll know that this is true. Deep and delicious all over, pondered passionately in pianissimo, keeping standard time. Duke's Mood Indigo, Joe Sample's Rainbow Seeker, Errol Garner's Misty, worshiping in harmony. You know the melody songs you just can't get out of your head, kind of blue, but not really. Just like the woman whose name you call as the autumn leaves begin to fall, or maybe like the melody by Ahmad Jamal, Poinciana. Last days of sun and sand and sea, you and your love and the music made 3, a lyric so familiar, a song so sweet, ebony notes on an ivory sheet, new tear stains on every page, a bit of your heart in a crystal cage. Kind of blue, but not really. You'll remember her most round midnight, Poinciana. Fragrant, fresh wind recollections, a song reprised. Summer breeze makes me feel fine, blowing through the jasmine in my mind. Miles and Q in that smoke-filled corner, talking about taking the A train, going up to Small's Paradise. Sassy's gonna be scatting and Hawk's band is in town, doing jazz, some real justice, marvelous, majestic, and kind of blue, but not really. You'll remember her most round midnight, Poinciana, pungent rose petal pictures, a song reprised. The first time ever I saw your face, I thought the sun rose in your eyes. Fantasy perfected in cocoa and cream, Harlem Nights in a Moulin Rouge daydream, the kind of blue that fills your soul engulfs your spirit and makes you whole. My Poinciana, I'll remember you most round midnight, frail fragments of love's fulfillment, kind of blue, but not really. Your song, reprised, till you come back to me, that's what I'm gonna do. Poinciana, my Poinciana. That's nice. So we're gonna take one more jazz turn, and then we'll get into a few other little things. We're gonna do a piece. The jazz canon is full of tunes that just kind of stick in your head if you love this stuff. And this one is one of the best. This is John Coltrane's Naima. So this is a riff on that. It's called Reprise for Naima. He would blow this note in the midnight air. Aloft in the ether, it floats out there. Staccato cadence sets a mood of bluesy lyrical attitude. Improvisational mystery like Monk's piano epistrophe or Miles' tone poem in a silent way, and Flanagan's piece at the end of the day. Syncopated in sharp, bright tone, a countdown to stardust, a twilight zone, like a blue train running against the night, setting the pace, then out of sight. With Hartman crooning or bags on vibes, trios, duets, quartets, and tribes, the blues, the ballads, the avant-garde, incredibly gorgeous, impossibly hard. Giant steps move us miles ahead, cooking up bop for Harlem street cred, melody's hand to the harmony wed, piano's lullaby fresh in the bed, rhythm rocks where the drummer led, rhythm rolls where the bass man sped, rhythm birthed what the saxophone bred, rhythm heard what the master said. How could he make the bitter taste sweeter? How could a tortured mind delete her? How could the mellowed scotch be neater? How could the smoke from each cigarette create blue notes that cast the net, create blue beads of cascading sweat, create blue haze that confounds regret, create blue nights that we can't forget? Coltrane's notes are a crystal scale, a velvet scream in the urban travail, the heavenly riff of a love supreme, the pungent whiff of a lover's dream. Coltrane's notes are a cozy romance, the breezy bounce of a bop and a dance, the languid lilt of Stray's lush life, the cadence cut by the artist's knife. Coltrane's notes are a standard refined like gold in a pan or gemstones mined, the sparkling glow of a hopeful dream, hot black coffee with a hint of cream. Coltrane's notes are Naima's reprise, like madness that brings a man to his knees, or sadness that comes when lovers part, the gladness removed from the balladier's heart. A tight arrangement cuts the gloom. The melody says that love's in bloom. The harmony spirit engulfs the room. The bride says yes to her lyrical groom. The groove and the beat then jump the broom. The kick drum resounds with a sonic boom, as genius is birthed in a soul-filled womb. Musical mythology mocks a twisted path the hero walks. With sword and shield, the hero stalks. The temptress shakes her twisted locks. Medusa snakes, his vision shocks. Holds up the mirror to stony blocks. The harp and the horn melt icy rocks. Serpent retreat and symphony talks. Love's door opens as lyric knocks. Coltrane's notes are a roller coaster, a hallelujah and a paternoster. The glorious jolt of a maestro's hand. The saxophone titan is in command. Coltrane's notes are a crazy rhythm, the squawk of chords and playful schism, the frenetic pace of Mr. PC, the coolest round midnight, will ever be. Coltrane's notes are genius refined, like gold in a pan or gemstones mined. The sparkling glow of a hopeful dream, hot black coffee with a hint of cream. Coltrane's notes are Naima's reprise.
Thank you. So I'm reminded by the man on my right that I said it wouldn't be political, and I guess it flew. That just flew in the face of everything that I said. But it's the nature of the beast, and so in order to define it, we have to describe it. So I want to start with you, Henry. Okay, since you're starting with me. I can't be far from the truth when I say that you are a true political junkie. Without ever running for elected office, you've been ensconced in Medford and Massachusetts electoral politics for well over 20, 30 years. How did you get into this realm, and why has it become so important to you?
Before I get to this one, I just want to touch on something that we talk about, that no right in this country is more precious than the constitutional right to vote. Yet, in this society, our society, you know what I'm referring to, and too many who did it. Now, let's trail back to your question. My son was born right here in Medford. My son just turned 50 years of age. When I came in Medford, right in this old building, where I've learned to do the move, I realized there were too many services available in Medford for people with disability. So my wife and I embarked to change that, not just in Medford, but throughout this entire country. What we've done went all the way to Philippines, elsewhere, okay? The reason we're doing it, what did we use? We used the power of voting. We vote for people. It wasn't until 1984 that we passed the ADA to get access to people with disability. It wasn't until 1971, 72 that we allowed certain people to vote. And still, every year, as we speak, you heard me say that in August, back in August, that they're making it so difficult for us, regular people. Okay, I'm not saying by color, I'm not saying by, sexual preference. I'm saying the less advantaged, the regular people, people like you and me, the everyday people, to vote. It's happening every year after a presidential election. There's an amendment. If you go on the Constitution, that's one of the reasons I don't leave home without this guy. Because when people talk to me, that's where I go. If you go on this and you look for the word vote, you ain't gonna find it in too many places. Until we do that, until we keep running, those who can run, crawling, those who can crawl, fight the fight the way we're supposed to fight it, it's not gonna happen.
Well, I'm going to come back to you on some of those things. I wanted to just point out that the book that Henry is holding up is a copy of the Constitution of the United States of America. So, Reverend Wendy, you tell the story however you like to tell it, but you're an advocate for people on every level of the human experience. That's been my knowledge of you as we've known each other. I know that seeing folks empowered by the right to vote is the key to you as both a minister and a community builder. Would you talk about that with us?
Yeah, thank you. And thank you to everyone who's here and watching, and Sandy and Henry. I need to say out loud, I kind of almost need a breath. I'm very moved by your work always, but in particular, that piece was really powerful for me. And I want to acknowledge my own heritage and my privilege. Before I say anything about the work that I do, I come from a long, long line of card-carrying capitalists. My maternal grandmother traced her roots to the Daughters of the American Revolution. My father was a capitalist and a patriot, and a registered Republican for his entire life. And he served in the Coast Guard for years and was elected to our local government, our community government, and took care of the public works in our town. And voting and civic engagement is in my blood. It was taught to me from the beginning as what I was supposed to do, and I have the privilege and the cultural milieu that I want to acknowledge before I even talk about it, because I think that there is an influence. We talked before we got started. I said that my perspective has been formed and informed and tainted, and Terry encouraged me to use painted by white supremacy, and that is the truth of my experience. And for a really long time, probably the first 3 decades of my voting experience, I voted because I was supposed to. And I voted because my daddy told me to. And I voted what my daddy told me to vote. And I never formed my own thoughts about that for a really long time. But for the past 2 decades, because I have become a person of faith and I've allowed my faith to guide me, I have voted without fail and have taught my millennial and digital sons that they must vote too, not because they're supposed to, but because their value system, their faith, formed by their value system formed by their faith, tells them that it's their responsibility to do it. And that's a different shift for me, not because I'm supposed to, but because I get to. I get to, and I get the gift of having that responsibility. So, the reason that this is important to me is because my faith teaches me to love my neighbor, all of them, everyone without exception. It teaches me to feed the hungry, especially those who cannot feed themselves, right, Henry? To care for the sick and visit the widow and the elderly and free those who are imprisoned. And that happens for me because I stay engaged and responsible in the civic process. And I think that, we can pray all we want about the things that are wrong in the world, but if we don't get out and do something about it, if we're not active and engaged in our local community, Tip O'Neill said, all politics is local, right? And that is a place where I feel like the church or faith communities in general, but all of our neighbors need to be involved. So it comes from my daddy and through my faith, and I think that it's the place where we can make change happen most fully.
Thank you so much for that. I appreciate it. Sandra, I'm going to ask you a mini question first, and then I'll ask you the real question I want to ask you. You're not from Massachusetts, are you?
I am not.
Okay. Are you Southern?
I am.
Okay, all right, now I can ask the real question.
Go ahead.
Okay. Coming to Massachusetts from a Southern heritage, what have you seen with regard to voter access, or maybe the lack thereof, that informs the election work you've been doing since coming to Medford?
Coming from the South, I used to be very embarrassed by it. I was born and grew up in the state that had more lynchings than any other state in the South, and that would be the state of Florida. Go back and look at the history books. I was a very young child and remember getting on the bus with my mother and fighting because I wanted to sit in the back of the bus. And I couldn't understand why I could not. It was at that point, and I was a young child, 4, maybe 5, that something started to burn in me. That I didn't look at people as colors because I went to Sunday school every Sunday, and there's an old song, red and yellow, black and white, they are precious in His sight. I never looked at people like that. I look at people as people. So I became an activist. And I extended myself into my community. I helped to raise $7.4 million in 1973. And if you think about how much money that truly is, that was a tremendous amount of money to put a new high school in our African American neighborhood. Because everybody that went to school was being bussed out. But instead, I was part of the reverse segregation. We were being bussed in. So I really got an eye-opening experience. I graduated very young from high school. I was 17. And I thought, oh, I was gonna go out and save the world. In 1978, I had the first opportunity to vote on my own. My family has an extensive military history. My father, my family were always Democrats. We were working class people. Voting was something that you did. And my father would always say to me, someone died for your right to vote. They died for that protection so that you had the right to vote. And of course, being the smart aleck kid that I was, I would say, yeah, but what about all those people that they don't let vote because they're different? And so the conversation would go back and forth. It was then that I began to understand that your voice, it is your vote. If you want changes to be made, those changes will not occur if you waste your vote.
Understood.
And wasting it by not exercising it.
Understood.
When we talk about federal, like the primary that we just had, it was both state offices and some federal offices. Midterms, as they're referred to. Everybody will come out. The voter turnout will be crazy for the November election. The voter turnout in 2024, that'll even be more insane. People don't realize that your voice is loudest in your own backyard. So if you walked out your back door and you screamed, I voted, how many of your neighbors would hear you? Several, I would imagine. But would they hear you in Washington? No, they wouldn't. So you need to start practicing voting in your own backyard first, making changes the way that you would like to see things move. But you can't get discouraged if it doesn't change the first time.
Understood.
If you get knocked down, get up. Get up. Crawl, walk, run. Make your voice be heard.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you. I'm going to come back to you, but I'm going to stop over at Henry for a second. Henry, can you talk about some of the things you found out during primary season that inform how Medford moves forward to the general elections?
We just, okay, one of the things, we just finished the primary, and just to echo a little bit of what Sandra just added, I don't believe we've done enough to get the people out. Out of 40,000+ people in Medford, I think we had 10,000. That's 20.63%. And we thought we were going to do a little bit better. Okay, now, today, that's what I told people. Don't come to me and say you can't vote. Because years ago, voting was 2 days. The primary in September and the general in November, and you're done voting. Today's process starts with vote by mail. Today's process goes by early voting in person. Today's process goes by, and you do that early voting goes for about a week, 8 days, 7 days, okay, in primary, 2 weeks in the general, to include 2 weekends. So how do you not exercising that vote? Okay, now, one of the key things I said, remember we talked about that people don't understand, because in 1866, that's when we, Black African American, were allowed to vote. But the problem we're facing today is because people don't give the voting power, the right, the value that power deserves. Because when 1965, when President Johnson passed the Voting Rights Act of 1965, that means they were prohibiting discrimination. Amendment took place in 1970. Amendment took place in 1975. Amendment took place in 1982. Amendment took place to 1992 and 2006. And most recently, to skip everything else, amendment took place in every city, state in 2020. What they're doing with the amendments is making it more difficult for people like me to vote. And I've done it recently. I was in Georgia for 20 years. I'll be going in Georgia soon, because that's what I do. A friend of mine called me and said, I'm in line in 2020. I think I told you that story, okay? And I have to share it with my people too here. Henry, I'm gonna vote today. I said, I'm so happy you're gonna vote. I'm leaving my house now because I have to be at work. I work second shift. I said, very good. Guy went 8:30 in the morning to vote. He called me at 1:30. He said, Henry, I gotta start working at 3. I don't think I'm gonna make it. I said, called in sick. He says, you sure? He did call in sick. Because he stood on that line for 12 and a half hours. So us here in Medford, now we're talking with our people in Medford, us here in the state of Massachusetts, you're gonna tell me you can't wait 5 minutes to vote? You can't walk 5 minutes to vote? That's the part. When you don't vote, you hurt me. You hurt everybody else that I'm trying to get on board to do the voting system. So people have to take that very, very serious. Get up and vote. I don't care who you vote for. That I'm not going to worry about it. Because you'll figure it out who to vote for. And you heard me before. I say, if I vote for somebody, you're going to know me. I don't care who I vote for president. That president better know Henry voted for him. But when I vote here on my local level, you said it, you have to. And that's what tomorrow you can go to that person. Because when you don't vote, you give the other people who voted less than they would normally do. So people got to take that seriously.
Very good. Sandra, I wanted to, kind of ask you the same question. Things that you found, as the chief administrator of the elections in Medford. What did you find out about the primary that informs how you move toward the general election in terms of,
People really like mail-in voting.
Okay.
So, and I can tell you that postcards for mail-in voting for the general are being printed this weekend. Ballots, we'll look for them to ship probably the last week in September.
Okay.
So it's a constant movement. It's really a constant movement. I have great staff in my office, and we work as a very well-oiled machine.
Okay.
It's you have to, because the rules change by the moment.
Understood.
You can get emails from the state that say, okay, well, don't do it this way. This is what we said, but now we have to do it this way. And that could be on the fly every day, so you have to be flexible.
Understood.
I was a little disappointed with the in-person early voting. Normally we have much higher numbers. We did a total of 7 in-person early, 772 for 7 days, which I was a little disappointed. But I know that the 14 days of early voting for the general will do at least 150 to 200 a day. So it's
substantial.
They like the alternatives of not just having to say, I only have 1 day to do this. What really hurt us on primary day this year was the rain.
The weather was horrible.
Yes.
Yeah.
Anytime you can look at the weather and see that it's raining, people aren't coming out.
Okay. Thank you.
So,
Thank you very much. Pastor Wendy, how have you weaved the conversations about, and I think you started to touch on this, about civic duty into faith messages you preach on Sunday, particularly the notion of voting as an act of conscience?
Yeah, that's good. My parishioners, those who are stuck listening to me, would say that I never stopped doing that. I just want to acknowledge the difference between partisan politics and nonpartisan politics. Just like the nonprofit that we're sitting in here, the church doesn't get to say, go vote for Joe or Mary. The church gets to say, go vote, and go vote your conscience, and go vote your values, and go vote what matters to your faith, or to your family, or to your community. And as a progressive faith community, that's pretty much a constant message in my particular community. And I think for many, progressive Protestant churches, that's true. I think that it's true for a lot of faith communities, because again, it is, while the Constitution and the Entitlement Clause keeps us separate, keeps the state out of religion, it doesn't keep religion out of the state. And I think that's often misinterpreted or misquoted or misrepresented in the world. Keep those church people out of here. We, separation of church and state. We don't want any messages about faith in the community, and that's just not right. That's just not true. It's not the way that the Constitution is written. And in fact, I would say that it is in the voting booth that religion and state meet. This is the place where we get to express our faith so directly, in the voting booth. And so, I will say that for those of you who are not followers of the same guy that I follow, it may not be this obvious, but to me, all I have to do is preach the good news, preach the message that Jesus shared with us, which was, again, love your neighbor, all of them. Love the earth, all of it. Love everything that God created. Put yourself out there to support that love through action and showing up for people. And one of the ways that you get to do that is to create the systems, address the systemic problems that cause social need, right, through the voting booth. So it's pretty much constant. It's woven into just about every sermon, particularly at this time of year. Get out there and do your civic duty, right?
I love it. Thank you for that. Okay, so Henry and or Sandra, I want you to briefly, cover the process pieces in play for statewide elections. So I'm just going to tick off a couple of these, and either of you can jump in and say what you need to say. Okay? Timing of the general election. When?
Timing?
Yeah.
No, date is November 8th, time is 7 to 8 p.m. at night.
Okay.
That's in person.
In person.
At the polls.
At the polls. Okay. Voter registration deadline.
10 days before the
October
election.
29th,
October 29th.
Okay.
5 p.m.
5 p.m.
Vote by mail application deadline.
3 days after. So it
November
would
1st.
be the 30th,
November 1st.
November 1st.
Okay. So the early voting schedule, the timeline, start and finish.
October 22nd to November 4th. October 22nd
Is when it starts?
is when it starts. That's a Saturday. October 20, that's a Saturday. 23rd is a Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
29 is a Saturday. 29 is a Saturday. 30th is a Sunday. That's what I say. You have 2 weekends. Okay? And then it finished exactly on November 4th.
Okay. Fantastic. Sandra, who is early voting available to?
Early voting is available to all voters,
Okay.
whether you're active, inactive, it's available to all voters.
Okay.
All cities.
Okay, and they have to be registered, obviously.
Yes,
Okay. While you're on it, polling hours on election day.
for the individual polling locations, the polls open at 7 and they close at 8 p.m. Now, let's say, for example, that you're in line and it's 5 minutes after 8.
Okay.
As long as you were in line prior to 8 o'clock,
Okay.
you will still get to vote.
Okay. It's like being in the post office at 5:01.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Very good. Henry, who can do absentee and mail-in voting?
Any citizen that apply for it can do it.
Okay.
Because the Secretary of State makes it easy for us. Master, they send it to you. You can go online and do that request and they'll send it to you.
Okay.
Or you can call the office you work at there, they'll help you to do it.
Okay.
That's a lot of people don't exercise that, but those people they're busy. I will consider to tell the people to go. We did it here at the center, okay? We did it here at the
Yeah,
center.
we'll talk about that. Yeah.
Okay, we brought people here and helped them because
Okay.
not everybody, especially the generation I represent, have access to. You saw that in COVID, so we had to bring them here to get it done.
Okay. Okay. Sandra, absentee and mail-in ballot request deadline.
It would be the November 1st date,
Okay.
and the website that you want to go to, mass.gov.
Okay. mass.gov.
Yes.
Okay. Very good. Very good. The return deadline for the absentee or mail-in ballot.
8 p.m., November the 8th.
Okay. 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 So, who can be a poll worker?
Any citizen who wants to do it. We're always looking for people. Even on election day, I get a call from Cedra. I say, I just lost a poll worker. What do we do? But we had extra. We just shift them. You see what I mean? So anybody can do it.
So, Sandra, what's the process for volunteering?
They need to contact me, sgale@medford-ma.gov.
Okay.
There's my direct line is 781-393-2404. There's a short form application to fill out. We just went all electronic
Okay.
in checking in. A lot of people may have noticed that. We check in on poll pads now rather than paperless.
Okay.
Made the process much smoother, much easier. So there is a training involved.
Okay.
Depending upon which role you choose, there are 3: an inspector, a clerk, or a warden.
Okay.
That will depend on which training you get directed to.
Very good. Very good. And then.
That's one thing, the
Okay.
key one to
Yes.
be volunteer. We pay people. The money is not great, but it's good.
Okay.
And we give them lunch.
All right. Yeah. Well,
And well, not hot lunch, but we are going, for the November election, I have a lot of folks that have different dietary issues or dietary specifics. So working in conjunction with the Medford Police, we're going to contract with a vendor who's going to give us a list of items that will cover vegetarian, vegan, all of those things, because my goal is to be inclusive, not exclusive.
Okay. Very good. Very good. Okay. So, if Medfordites have questions about the election, where can they get their questions answered?
They can call me directly,
You just gave the number?
or you can go to mass.gov.
Okay.
That's the Secretary of State's website. You could check your polling location, check if you're an active or inactive voter. And if you're an inactive voter, it doesn't make you ineligible.
Okay.
What you need is, the easiest thing is a driver's license or a state ID.
Okay.
But if you don't have that, a lease, an electric bill,
Okay.
your bank statement,
Mhm.
something that has your physical address on it.
Okay.
And
So-
that will make you active. You have to sign an affirmation.
Very good. So we're still in Massachusetts, blessedly so, still on the spectrum that's looking to make it easier and not difficult for people to vote.
Yes, that's correct.
Very good.
That's correct.
Very good. Reverend Wendy, some of the things that worry you about aspects of the faith community's hand in the electoral process.
Oh, that's a whole thing. So I guess the thing that I am, really concerned about, and this feels very national as opposed to local, but I certainly am concerned about nationalism, about, frankly, the religious rights perspective on how they get to tell people what to do and how to do it, and the influence of some aspects of religion on our government. I think there is, I know what I think is right. I know what the Establishment Clause is intended to do, and yet I think that there are religious bodies and people who represent religious bodies who go over the edge with that and are expressing a value system that is inconsistent with the Constitution and inconsistent with what I think most faith traditions care about. I talk about Jesus, but I think that Islam and Judaism and Buddhism and Sikhism, I think all of those traditions are about peace and love and kindness and grace and community, being connected to each other, and a misinterpretation of those things that happens at the extremes is influencing our democracy, and I think threatening it. So I'll say that out loud, and we'll have to have another conversation about that for like 6 hours.
Well, I honestly wish we had the 6 hours right now, because one, it's amazing. It's an amazing conversation. It's amazing to be able to sit down with folks who kind of know about different edges of this, and kind of really dig into how we're all feeling about this thing that is so very important in American society. So I want to thank you.
Let's add this.
Okay, please.
I'll add that line and everything, because I'm going to be talking about that tomorrow. Voting means a lot to our lives,
Mm-hmm.
to the lives of all the people around us, not those close to us, the one around us.
Mm-hmm.
Helping other people, other American citizens to register to vote is important.
Mm-hmm.
Just remind them how important it is to vote. That will make our participation, that will make our voice stronger in the so-called U.S. democratic process.
Okay. Thank you, Henry. Thank you, Sandra.
If I may,
Mm-hmm.
as you're watching what's happening nationally, if you don't exercise your right to vote,
Mm-hmm.
it could begin to happen right here.
Okay.
We're very fortunate in the Commonwealth to have people that understand our voting rights.
Mm-hmm.
They're not to be touched.
Okay.
But in other places,
Mm-hmm.
they are not as fortunate.
Absolutely.
And there is a sign that hangs on the election department's door
Mm-hmm.
that says, "Protect my vote,"
Mm-hmm.
because they are infringing on voter rights in a lot of
A
places.
lot of places. Absolutely.
And we have to learn to scream up louder to help them.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So I want to thank you, Sandra Gale, for coming this evening. Henry Malorin, as always, thank you so much. Reverend, I appreciate you. So we're not finished talking about it, obviously. We've got several weeks before we actually get out there and vote. Now, I will tell you that from the pulpit, Reverend Wendy will continue to inform her folks that they need to get out there and exercise their constitutional right. From City Hall, certainly Sandra, and from Medford, Mattapan, Randolph, Brockton, Dorchester, and pretty much all corners of the state of Massachusetts. I know Henry will be, calling folks out to go do what they know they need to do. So I appreciate you. Thank you very much. We're going to shift gears a little bit. It'll take us a minute to do it, but please have a seat in the audience and enjoy what we have to present to you next. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you. And to everyone watching out there, thank you so much for your attentiveness and interest in our discussion. Get ready for something very different on the musical side of the coin right after we take a break for some special announcements. So I'm going to do the promos, then we're going to reset the room, and then we'll get into the musical portion of the evening. So the late Maya Angelou once said that as you grow older, you will discover that you have two hands. One is for helping yourself, the other is for helping others. WMCC needs the other hand. Please consider getting involved, and you can ask us how. The first thing that we have on the docket, the next thing is our annual meeting. It's on September 18th in English, at 2 p.m. live and via Zoom. You must be a member in good standing in order to vote on board nominees, etc. And you can renew or take out a membership by contacting the WMCC office at 781-483-3042 to check on your membership status to renew or to join. Upcoming, hosted here at the West Medford Community Center on September 30th and October 1st at 7 p.m. Free and open to the public in the backyard patio area, the second annual and first live Medford Jazz Festival. So weather permitting, there is no rain day schedule, but we'll be out back and it'll be something to see. Elders join us each week, Tuesday through Thursday, for a nutritious lunch and vibrant fellowship. Lunch is served at 12 noon. Call ahead, 781-483-3042 to make a reservation. AYS, our after-school youth program, is currently enrolling middle schoolers. Contact the main office for more information. And also, we have pandemic staples available. We have masks and we have testing kits. Please check with our office. If you need these items, we'll make them available to you. So how you can help us? Your tax-deductible donations help to support the missions of WMCC. Partner with us in carrying the mission forward. Due to limitations of COVID-19, many of the usual funding streams that the WMCC have been, maybe restricted, in some cases closed off. So please consider making a tax-deductible donation to this vital community organization. We also have a list of dry goods and paper supplies that you can donate to. You can make monetary donations by phone, online, or by check. Please contact Lisa Crossman at 781-483-3042 for more information or to become a member.
Well, if you won't return to me, the simple, painful mystery will fold me up. Break me like the hollow stairs that I go climbing everywhere for a bit of peace. Because if there's one broken heart lifting its hands apart, because if there's one broken heart, then there must be two. sounds look the same to me. The sky will veil a memory, will hold me up. And steal me from the hollow air that I've been breathing since you made your bitter peace. 'Cause if there's one path to take, you know your mind should change halfway along the way. I could make you turn back. 2, 3, 4. Ooh. Get your letters out. Yeah, you'll be singing alone when your world comes down. Yeah, but I'll be singing alone when you starve. Return to me. Return to me. Because if there's one thing I need, you know it's not beauty. But if there's one heart I need, it will always be you. It will always be you. It will always be That last thing we just did melted the polar ice cap. But because we are against global warming, we immediately requested that it refreeze. How do you do that? It's like, where's the dial of the remote that can make a human do that? I think
It's not on the page either.
yeah, that was Linda.
I have to do something.
Linda.
You're right.
Linda, by all means, Linda, do not stick to the script. So one of the things I like to do on the guitar is I like to change the tuning of the strings, and I kind of learned this from watching blues musicians who change the tuning so that they can play with slides. And what it does is it sometimes will give you several strings that have the same note, and it makes it easier to sing over. So what I just did is I tuned the G string to E, and now what I've got is a bunch of E's. And it just makes it sound a little bit richer. This is a song about, my friends used to ask me to go out and go to parties or go to a bar, and I'm very codependent, so I would always like lie and be like, yeah, I got something to do. And it was just to go home and like hang out with the woman who would very generously marry me. So this is